Hey, this is JesseCanty. Man, I am so glad that you took the time to download this podcast. Listen, it's getting ready to be a blessing to you. It is power-packed full of wisdom. Listen, as you hear this episode and maybe you want to be a blessing to this podcast, well, you can hit me up on CASHAPP. Type in JesseECanty, Jesse, the letter E, CANTY, with the $, of course. And you can be a blessing. Anything you give will be appreciated. I thank you, and I pray that nothing but God's blessings and his best be upon you. Take care. Hey, this is JesseCanty with another episode of How Bad Do You Want It? I have been looking to the heavens all week long. It's coming into the weekend. It's Friday now, and I'm going to still continue to look to God because I'm expecting some things to come to pass that's going to blow my mind. Not only so much of what he's going to do for me, but he led me to come in this podcast and give it to you. Well, let me tell you what my title is.
I'm looking for a miracle.
Did you get it? Let's do this, man. Yeah, man.
Man of wisdom, man of wisdom. From the pulpit to the podcast, from the pulpit to the podcast, to the podcast, yeah. JesseCanty. Pursuing my destiny. Pursuing my destiny, yeah. Tell me, how bad do you want it?
Welcome to another episode of How Bad Do You Want It? This is episode 104, and it is entitled, I'm Looking for a Miracle. Man, let me pray so I can get in this thing. Father, I need you. We all need you, God. I pray right now that you speak something that is a now fresh word, God. I know it's a podcast, but this week you've been using me as a preacher. So, Father, I pray right now that you prophesy something that's going to come to pass in the ears of the believer, in the lives of the believers, God. You get all the praise, honor, and glory, and we thank you and we love you even more. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. That's right, man. I'm looking for a miracle. This has been a strange week for me. I think the two podcasts is one that was Come to Me and the other was entitled, my goodness, what was it? Lord, you have my permission. That's what I've been dealing with this week. And I've been really speaking something out of my spirit that I've been sensing. And what I've been sensing is God has really been placed upon my heart, the power of expectation. I'm telling you something, man. This is true across the board. And whatever you expect, you could be saved or unsaved. Your expectation speaks volumes. And I'm not trying to tell my private business, but let me say this private example. My father right now, who's in the hospital, he's been fighting. God bless his heart. He's been fighting for a while. God healed him, and now he's got some other things that God is healing him of right now as I speak. But he's in Charleston in the hospital, and I made it a point, and God pressed it upon my heart. I talked to my dad earlier Sunday night, and my dad's spirits wasn't sounding too good. It wasn't sounding too good at all. My mother called me and turned around and said the same thing when she called me, and so that was confirmation. God pressed it upon my spirit Monday morning. Call your father every morning, call your father every night, and when you call him, speak positive, speak blessings, speak miracles, speak etc. Because you're going to help you and your mother and your prayers is going to help lift his spirits. Because sometimes when we're weak, we need others who are strong who's going to help us. So God has really been having me in a place of the power of expectation. So when I talk to my father, instead of talking negative, I talk about when he get out that hospital, how we going to ride motorcycles together, etc. This is what I'm believing. This is what I'm asking God. And as I seen the week progress, I seen healing start to take place. And then the Lord placed in my spirit last night or yesterday that he and I put on Facebook, I expect miracles are about to happen. Not only this miracle that I'm asking God to do for my father, but even other miracles. I'm expecting it in my spirit. I told you also that this week has been a week of unexpected attacks. A week that the enemy had been hitting and causing flare-ups, causing things to just, that was that you thought that was already done deal, and all of a sudden, boom, it flare back up, and it kind of mess with your faith if you're not careful. Well, God told me, he says, even in the midst of attacks where the enemy is shooting at you, don't let the enemy touch your expectancy. Don't let the enemy start to reprogram your expectation. In other words, if you're expecting God, and what is expectation? Off the top of my head is what you expect. Thank you, Holy Ghost. What you expect is what you anticipate. I love words, man. I really do. What you expect to happen is what you anticipate, or also known as what you are assured that's going to happen. That is your expected expectation. That's the definition of expectation. So what do you anticipate? Don't allow the enemy, though he launches his attack, hear me good now, don't allow the enemy to reprogram or rewire, or what that computer term, hack, there we go. Don't allow the enemy to hack your expectation. And he does it with so many people. Let me give you a prime example how we allow the enemy to hack our expectation. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, hack is more of a computer terminology. That means somebody have broken in your computer. Somebody have somehow got in your computer and they ain't even come to your house. They just did it because you got online. They saw you online and they found a little cunning way to get into all your files and mess them up. And the files is the brain behind the computer. My computer ain't acting right because somebody done hacked your computer and done messed it up. Well, the enemy hacks our expectation. And how do he do it? When we start taking on his thoughts. When we start taking on what he says and we started entertaining it in our mind. So instead of me believing what God is going to do and what I'm asking God to do, and I'm anticipating and expecting nothing but miracles and blessings from God, the enemy can start to wear you down unless everybody who hearing me, as even the greatest faith listeners right now, at some point in time, be honest, you got weak because you're human. And when that time you got weak, the enemy start messing with you, try to reprogram your thoughts. Instead of letting this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, he started giving you, that's what he did with Eve. He started giving you the thoughts that he wanted you to have. And he started to try to rewire your anticipation. So now you start, instead of anticipating greatness and you waking up with a spring in your step and you telling people, you prophesying to people and just decreeing something that you have yet to see manifested. Instead of doing that, now you woe is me. Now you're down and you start thinking the worst. And that's when the enemy have hacked into our thought process and we're rewiring our expectation. Let me tell you something. This is very vital because the power of expectation is closely tied to the law of attraction. I'm going to say that again. The power of expectation is closely wired to the law of attraction. Now, when I say the law of attraction, it's a lot out there on the law of attraction. It's a lot that people are launching it out into mystique or mystical realms that don't even involve God. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about whatever you expect to happen, it will attract it to your life. This is not something that somebody came up with. This is the word of God. This is why we have to call those things that be not as though they were. This is why we have to speak faith. This is why we have to decree and declare that thing. This is why we have to look on what is not seen, which is temporal, and focus on instead of looking on what is seen, which is temporal, and look on what is not seen, which is eternal. We have to believe that God is able to change a situation. This is what you have to do when God told Moses to strike a rock and all of a sudden water came out of that rock. And the next time he spoke to the rock and water came out of that rock. You got to believe and anticipate and be convinced and assured of what God said. When you feel that way, you are walking in God's expectation or a faith level of expectation. And it will begin to kick in the next law, which will begin to attract it to you. God will cause these things to manifest in your life. Now, I'm not saying you can control everything, and if that's the case, none of our loved ones would die, because we don't ever want to see them go. We would never probably move anywhere, because anything that tries to move us in any realm moving, all we would do is pray and speak against it, and that's not going to happen. Sometimes miracles come and we don't expect them, or we don't recognize them. Sometimes miracles come through shut doors. Sometimes a miracle can come through a dried up riverbank, where God was just, all he was doing, he dried up the river just to change your direction or your location. So you don't know how God is going to move, but it doesn't change you from expecting him to move. All right, let me get into this. I'm taking too long to explain this. What is a miracle? Since my title is I'm looking for a miracle is an event that seems inexplicable by nature or scientific laws. Theologians typically say that the divine providence, God regularly works through nature, yet as a creator is free to work without, above, or against it as well. Now hear that again now. A miracle is an event that seems to be inexplicable by nature or scientific laws. When I say I'm looking for a miracle, I'm expecting God to do something that cannot be explained, that cannot be articulated, that cannot be defined, that people won't even understand, and my mind won't understand, but my faith will know that it came from the heavens. I need God to do a few miracles in my life. And he's already worked some stuff this week, but I believe that God is still up to something on your behalf. I believe that if you decree and declare this word, because this was given to me just for you, go into the weekend decreeing and declaring and thanking God for the miracles that's getting ready to come to pass in your life. I want to give you a scripture reference for this here, and I'm going to read it to you without reading the whole scripture. It's coming from 1 Kings chapter 18, around verse 43 and on down and more into that. Whenever you get a chance, go read it more yourself. You'll see in that part, this passage of scripture, where Elijah said to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There is nothing." And 7 times he said, "Go again." Then it came to pass the 7th time that he says, "There is a cloud as small as a man's hand rising out of the sea." So he says, "Go up and say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Now listen, as Elijah prayed for rain, he expected an answer. And he would not stop praying, y'all, until he saw that answer come to pass. So he sent his servant out there to look in the clouds for the coming rain that he was expecting. The servant went out and saw nothing. What do you do when you're expecting God, something of God, and you see nothing? I tell you what you do. You do what Elijah did. He kept praying. I'm going to say it again. What do you do when you're decreeing and declaring and expecting a miracle and believing that God is going to draw that thing to you because of your expectation, and it does not seem to come to pass? Then you do what Elijah did and you keep praying. 5 times more, the prophet sent his servant to see the answer to where he was praying on his knees, where he had his head between his knees, and the servant saw nothing. But when that servant went back the 7th time, this was all of a sudden he saw a manifestation, or a small manifestation. My God, my baby leaping on that one, man. A small manifestation of the prayer request or the expectation that he had. Now, this illustrated persistent prayer. I mean, stubbornly persistent prayer. And it also illustrated this here, that do not despise your day of small beginnings. Some of you have been asking God for big things, but you have been thinking God have not answered because all you've seen was small things happen. And really, this thing said it was a cloud that arose out over the sea about the size of a man's hand. Now, I'm going to go by the perfect, the revelation that God revealed to me years ago. And I heard God say it clearly. He said that this cloud seemed to be about the size of a man's hand. This cloud was not a small cloud. It was literally a big cloud. How do you know it was a big cloud? Because Elijah told him it was a great storm on the way. It was a big cloud that was yet at a distance. If we look to the stars right now, it seems so small. But I guarantee you, if you travel to the stars, the closer you get to it, you realize it's bigger than what you imagine. So when you see a cloud, or when he saw a cloud, I'm using you, as you see a small glimpse of what you've been asking God for, not the full manifestation, not the dark clouds and the downpour that you've been expecting, but you are seeing something start to formulate way out over the river. That means that your prayer is pulling it into existence. Your consistency and your expectancy is pulling it into existence. That's another place. Let's stop and say it again. I'm looking for a miracle. Say it out of your mouth. Every time you decree something like that, go into your weekend, letting this be second nature. When you see something that looks like it's the opposite of what you believe in God to say, I want you to open up your mouth and say, in the name of Jesus, I'm looking for a miracle. Keep speaking it over your life, and every time you say it, just like every time Elijah prayed, he pulled that thing into a manifestation. And it will appear small at the beginning, and it's way off in a distance. And what do a man's hand have to do with this? If you put your hand out there and block it, you can't even see it. In fact, that's why you got to be careful who you're dealing with and who you're praying and believing God with, because sometimes they are anointed by the enemy to keep you blind from the manifestation that God is doing in a great distance that yet to be brought to pass or brought closer to where you can see it. Be careful who you allow to be your prayer partner, or you're telling them what you're praying, or you're telling them what you're expecting. Because some people will say, what miracle are you expecting? You don't have to tell them that answer. You just know you're expecting a miracle, and you're not going to stop until you see in the natural what you sense in the spirit. I almost hit the thing, hit that bomb on that one. You are not going to stop until you see in the natural what you sense in the spirit. Say it again, Jesse. You are not going to stop until you see in the natural what you sense in the spirit. Every time you pray a persistent prayer, every time you decree out your mouth over your business, I am looking for a miracle. I expect God to give where the enemy look like he's taking. I expect God to restore life when the enemy look like he's trying to take death. I respect an overflow of abundance finances where the enemy trying to bring poverty. I expect growth where the enemy is trying to kill and let death come. I speak right now, increase over every area pertains to me. I'm looking for a miracle. I need a move from God that man cannot conjure up. I need a move from God that we won't have to scratch our head and start to try to figure out, was it us or was it God? I want an absolute move from God that says, that shouts beyond a shadow of a doubt, if the Lord did not move, it could not be done. I want an absolute move from God that doctors would know this was nothing but God in what I like to call divine intervenience. What is it? Divine, there you go. I'm messing my thing up here. Divine intervention. There we go. I need a divine intervention. My God, I need a divine intervention to where when God does move, nobody will question whether this was him or whether this was something that you conjured up. And this man prayed 7 times. He had no power to manifest that cloud. This came from the heavenlies. When you're looking for a miracle, that means your eyes is looking towards the heavens. I'm telling you, when you're looking for a miracle, that means you are looking for God to do what you cannot do. In fact, let me go ahead and get ahead of you. Let me tell you what the Clark sisters said in 1994. They says, I'm looking for a miracle. I'm expecting the impossible. I can feel the intangible. That which I could not touch, I can feel it because my expectation and my faith is looking for a miracle. I can see the invisible. Can you see what you don't see or what everybody else don't see? Can you see yourself in that house that God promised you? Can you see yourself or your loved one healed like you asking God? If you're going to pray it, then you might as well see it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. God has blessed us to have listeners all around the world. And I thought to myself, I said, maybe there's somebody that wants you to have a prayer request. That wants you to pray with them concerning anything, your family or whatever it is. If that be so, listen, drop me an email at JesseCantyPodcast at yahoo.com. JesseCanty podcast at yahoo.com. I would love to hear from you. I love to pray with you. And I want you to have a blessed day. Looking for a miracle, expect the impossible, feel the intangible, see the invisible. I'm looking for a miracle. I'm expecting the impossible. I'm going to say it again. I feel the intangible. I see the invisible. And then she broke off into the hook, and the sky is the limit to what I can have. I believe there is no limit to what I can have. If I believe and receive it, my God and your God will perform it today. If you believe and receive it, you got to understand that your God will perform it over your life. What are the qualifications for you to say, I'm looking for a miracle? I'm glad you asked. One of the qualifications is, are you growing dissatisfied in a present situation that's been grieving your spirit? I mean, you've been dealing with things in life and you're just growing and growing and growing. The more you pray down in your spirit, you are not satisfied by what you see. See, people don't teach this part. I'm going to show you something here. How do you know when God is setting you up to expect a miracle? Several ways. One of them, as I'm just saying now, is what is it that that you keep seeing and that you keep increasing daily that is grieving your spirit that you're not satisfied with? When you see something that God is dealing with you on that you're not satisfied with, it is an indication that God is letting you know. He's hinting you, throwing you a hint that you have the power to open up in prayer on that thing and God will change it. Because this thing is grieving my spirit. The Bible said Jesus told his sisters, show me where you laid Lazarus. And he groaned within his spirit. What is calling you to groan within your spirit? It is the indication that you got the right and the power given from heaven, the divine permission to decree a divine intervention over that situation. Because it's groaning, because it's grieving within your spirit, causing you to groan, and it's a different dissatisfaction. It's one that the spirit realm keep bringing back to you. It's one that you keep wrestling with. That's God letting you know that you got the power to change this, how you respond to it. Come on, somebody. Another way you can expect a miracle is by remembering all the ways all the words that God has spoken over your life. When you see something happening that God prophetically or decreed over your life that was opposite from what you see, you are authorized by God to decree and declare that you expect a miracle and you need a divine intervention from heaven. Because if God said it, that means it's going to come to pass. All you got to do is hold on to it and believe and wait until your change come. And when I say wait, I mean pray until you see something happen. Push. Pray until you see something happen. You stand there, you stand off with my aunt, Evangelist Christine Thompson. I've said this on one of my podcasts. This is what she did when I was much younger in the ministry, and she still does it now. And it will never leave my mind. I get the radical point that she takes. She's a woman of faith. And whenever she get down to her last holding on to God, she'll take that Bible and throw it on the floor and stand on it with her feet and say, God, you see what I'm doing? I'm standing on your word. Now, she's not saying that stuff just naturally. She's saying, God, I'm acting out something that my spirit man is doing every day. I'm fighting the fight of faith, and I'm standing on your word. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down trusting in you. I believe you when you said that you are a man that you cannot lie. I believe you when you spoke over my life, God, and when you gave me the dream, or you gave me the utterance, or you gave me the expectation, Father. I'm going to hold on to what you told me to do. Next thing you do, you pray the word over it. You find the word of God that the Spirit leads you to where you speak life over it. You speak life and not death. You pray the word over it. And then you invite others who know God and who's on that level with you to pray with you. These are what do you do when you're expecting God for a miracle? You get others to pray, because if one can put 1,000 in flight, two can put 10,000 in flight. So you invite others who on that level of faith. Don't invite people who don't have that faith. They don't have a walk with God. Do not tell them. If they ain't even worshiping God, they're not saved, they're not going to church, you don't see the fruitful life of a Christian, do not go to them and ask them to be your prayer partner. Everybody who may be your hanging partner may not be your prayer partner. Because you need somebody who's going to believe God on the level where you believing. Also, whenever you begin to see something that lined up with the word, when you knowing what God's word says, you have the right to stand on it and pray until you see something happen. And just begin to remind yourself, I'm looking for a miracle. Going into this weekend, let me talk to you as I come to the close, man. I am looking for, now, the last thing you do, with what I'm saying here, the last thing you do is you begin to have a lifestyle of worshiping God. Until you see a change, you ain't got to just beg God, you start to worship God. Because you already know that he heard you. Elijah showed you how to pray, and then when you don't pray like the Gentiles pray, they got to say it because they may be heard, so they hope they may be heard by their much speaking. God heard what I said. I'm standing on what I said to him and what he promised me. And in the meantime, I'm going to adopt the life of worship. I'm going to begin to worship God and thank God for what is already done in the heavenlies. I'm waiting for a manifestation in the natural realm. My spirit man is looking for a miracle. I expect with that which is impossible. That which is impossible with man is possible with God. I only want from God that which I can't do for myself. I will see the invisible. And when I begin to see the invisible and I know that cloud is coming, I'm going to prepare myself to receive it. Anybody who look to me and say, how did you get where you're at and how did you got what you have? That is an opportunity for me to witness God, witness for God and say, listen here, this came from the heavenlies. This didn't come from Jesse. This didn't come from no doctors. This didn't come from no money. This didn't come from no congressman. This came straight from God. Medicine cannot take glory from God. I trust in God who have given unto me freely the things which he promised me. And all I have to do is stand flat-footed and say, I expect you to do something that's going to be mind-blowing. Throughout my weekend, when everything else is shut down, my God in heaven is still open. I expect miracles. I expect to wake up to miracles. I expect to every miracle God bring to me, I'm going to give him all of the glory and let people know that if it had not been for the Lord that was on my side. My God, I looked down and saw that time. It would not have came to pass. I don't know, man. It feel like I didn't do it effective on this podcast as I wanted to do. But I'm telling you now, I hope you got something what God said. You must expect your miracle that he promised to you. Hold your position, and you're going to see a manifestation of what God said. That's what he used me this week. He used me to be a preacher and let me prophesy to you. And if you believe it, you're going to see it come to pass. Trust me. Know that I love you. You have a blessed weekend in the Lord.
How bad do you want it? Pursuing my destiny. Pursuing my destiny, yeah. How bad do you want it? Yeah. From the pulpit to the podcast. Pursuing my destiny. Pursuing my destiny.
Hey business owners, this is Rashad Brown with Swipe Fast, located in Columbia, South Carolina. We are excited to be partnering with JesseECanty and the How Bad Do You Want It podcast. Since 2017, Swipe Fast has been helping business owners like you save up to 99% in their debit and credit card processing fees. So if you process business to business or business to consumer payments, we have solutions that will meet your needs and would love to hear from you. You can reach us at swipefast.com/save. That's swipe, spelled with the Y, or contact us at 1-800-597-0713. Don't forget to let us know that JesseECanty sent you. Have a blessed day.